Hello my good friends, it's Roger once again, explaining the unexplainable, shining a beacon of light, so to speak, from a citadel of truth, shining that beacon of light on a desert of delusion. Oh, well, that's sort of the way I think. Now, welcome to the intellectual oasis. Now, speaking of an oasis, this is the exact opposite of an oasis. And this was on the Science Channel today. And I fully understand what's going on here. And there's a saying they have in Maine. They say, you can't get there from here. And what does that mean? You can't get there, which is there. Where is there from here? Well, here is the current way of thinking, and there is reality. You can't get there from here. You cannot get there from here. If you can't get your mind into understanding that the earth is literally constructed of creatures, you will never achieve reality. Never. Ever, ever. You can rationalize and theorize and guesserize until you explode. I tell you what, that makes no difference. You have to start from the reality. Alright, so let's get to reality. The earth is made of creatures. Before I get into this, I'm going to show you why I can say that, and then let's get into what is really happening in this unoasis. Alright, this is a mud fossil video I did a couple months back, and this is about Lake Natron. Now, Lake Natron is like solid sodium. That's what natron is. Na, it's not SO. Sodium is Na, it's natron. Now, this is a kidney. Now, I'm going to show you why I say that. You know, you look at it, there's a bunch of dirt. Well, we'll just keep watching and listen to this. I have sat through many an autopsy, understanding life and what is inside of a human body. And this right here, you see it? Feeding this. Feeds right into the kidney. It's a kidney. It's a kidney. When I looked at it, I said, how could this possibly be? How could that be a kidney? But I see it, there it is. And then I see this green thing up here, and I see, well, what is this? And that is what's leaking into Lake Natron. You see it? That's the same stuff in that hole. So I said, alright, this is the bile duct, and it leaks into Lake Natron, which is extremely, they call it the petrifying lake, because anything that lands in there dies and turns to salt petrification spontaneously. The same thing that's happening in that hole, because this is a lung from a gigantic creature. And you say, whoa, Roger, how could they be so big? And I say, because they were enormous, and I will show you that, and then let's go to the hole. All right, so you go back to this. Does Lake Natron really turn animals to stone? It kills them instantly. They show them perched here like they just landed there and died. Well, they really didn't. They died, fell over, and people perched them back up and things like that. But it's instantaneous death by being in those waters almost. I mean, it's very quick. Let me put it that way. They don't survive well at all. Okay, that's a shot of the kidney. And let's see, whoops, we're going to save that. And we've got kidney with the bile duct showing right here. Now, I showed this in the in that shot of Lake Natron, and that is where the bile duct goes. And it's green, and it's part of the kidney, and that's the stuff that brings the stuff into your kidneys. I didn't make this up. This is the way the body's made, and this is showing evidence that the earth is literally constructed of creatures. And I had some, oh yeah, the dead bodies. We've got that to show you too. Let's go back up to that. Alright, because you go a decomposing body effluent, let's see. Alright, this is exactly the same thing that you saw with the dragon. It's a runoff of the body fluids. Now I have another one that's maybe, but you could see it, and actually you could make out the outlines of the bodies and everything. So I did a lot of work on this, and where's your dead bodies? You can actually see where the muscles were and where the heel bones were. All right, this person was upside down. That's the back of their calf hitting there. That's where their heels hit. The feet were sticking straight up. You'd think it was the other way around. It's not. All right, and this up here is where the body leaked off, and this is the decay that runs off around it. It's just what happens to a decomposing creature. In this case, it happened to be an unfortunate human being, and I'm sorry to have to show these things, but I'm trying to make this evident. All right, they were enormous, and they were just exactly what was written. As spectacularly insane as that sounds, it's true. This is a dragon. That's his head, that's his neck, runs all the way down into his body here, and that's his tail. These are his legs. It was a red dragon. That's the redness that had leaked away from. This is a giant fish that dragon was attacking. Oh, you guy's crazy. He's going insane. Well, let's just see how insane I am. It's how insane you will have to be to just dismiss this. That, I am saying, is a dragon's head. I discovered this several years back, and I have been pushing this to people to understand dragons were exactly what they said. With the fluty little things going down their side, the little fuzzy things, the dragon scaled throat going down, a flashy red eye, spitting out stuff to kill things and burn things up, and it is nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. You see that? That's what he spit at that fish. And that is a fish. I don't care what you say. You can laugh all you want. That is a fish. And it was written that there was a Leviathan that had a fight with the dragon, and God came down and slew them both. So you can laugh all you want. Now let's go back up to this dragon and see his dragon-scaled throat as you chuckle. All right? This is not a rift, little cleavage in the rocks and so forth, unless the rocks in this area happen to be dragon scaled, which they do. Okay, that's not just rocks. You know, geologists, oh, they're just rocks. It's not rocks, and that is not just a valley. That is a throat of a dragon. Not only that, this dragon died not long ago. You see this? That's the blood running off a decomposing, rotting dragon that fell to the earth not long ago. You show this to any coroner. They'll know exactly what this is. It's a thing that died and it leaked away. I have shots of this. I'll show them. I've shown this over and over and over and over, and nobody seems to think that they can get their hands around this, because this is like literally entire Morocco all the way up to the Mediterranean. And I'm telling you for a fact, if you can't see this, that's his guts, that's the legs, this is his tail. And if that tail has dragon scales in it, well, then I'm going to say that's his tail. And guess what? It has dragon scales in it. And that is blood. That is what happens with blood. And here is the leakage from that dead area in his body. All right, so if you want to laugh, laugh. But I'm showing you what's reality, and they will never, ever, 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 ever understand geology, space, earth, anything until they deal with this reality. And this is what chafes me. For 6 years now, I have been displaying things, and I have DNA certified giant humans, hundreds of feet tall, certified with DNA anatomists, autopsy anatomists. I've had little pieces of them, CAT scan. I have the specimens, and nobody can get their hands around this, so they muddle in the dark, coming up with these insane theories that are based on the old thinking, which is not correct, because they cannot allow themselves to think of such a thing as this. So until they do, they're just walking around in circles like in Disney World saying, oh, look at that, isn't that a fabulous thing? It's true, it's real. Well, I'd take a little closer look. All right, this map goes back to Herodotus' time, which was about 450 BC, one of the earliest maps, and it might even be the earliest map ever made. Herodotus was the absolute fabulous historian. And he went around and he collected all the stories and was, I mean, huge volumes of stories. Anyway, right there's Atlantis. Right there's Atlantis. There's, normally the Mediterranean Sea, and he's showing Atlantis was there. Now, Atlantis was outside of the Pillars of Hercules, because the Pillars of Hercules and the other pillars that I showed are here. This was ocean, and this side was ocean. This was the barrier between the two, long ago. And this is the fish that I just talked about. There's his scales. There's his fin that got attacked by the dragon. Go up here. It's Google Earth. I'm not hiding anything. This is nothing I can keep to myself. This is all wide open. And it appears that when they had this battle and both died, because this thing attacked him, obviously, he's rotting the fish's flesh. You go up there and look. If you can miss that, I don't know what to say. You just have no ability to think correctly in my mind. All right, that's all this stuff, and that came right out of his throat, which is a dragon's headed throat, so deal with it. There's the fin, the scales, there's the fin. He attacked the fish's fin with power, and guess what else happened at that time? The Sahara Ocean drained where the fish used to live, and it washed all the sediment out into the ocean, creating the Cape Verde Islands. And the geologists say there was an offshore collapse. I don't know how you could miss this. Not only that, that is Atlantis. It is exactly the structure of Atlantis, and there it was outside the straits and outside the Straits of Hercules, so it fits both statements, and it was outside this straits, which was said in antiquity to have been either attacked or collapsed for some reason, and I think it collapsed because of the struggle of the fish and the dragon. And it was Atlantis. And that was 11,500 years ago, according to Plato, who had extremely good sources, came from Solon and all of the people from the temples and the ancient priests that escaped from Atlantis. They didn't all die. Some of them were here and there. They're all over the world. And they took up residence and became the literal masters of the people all around the rest of the world. They were extremely aggressive people. Very aggressive. And the Greeks were the only one that would stand up to them. All right, well, now that we've established that, we're going to go back to that hole in the ocean, which is a kidney, which is being infused with natron, which is this heavy-duty salt solution. I will critique their analysis of that, and this is all under the Fair Use Act. I'm not infringing on anybody's copyright. I'm just commenting on their assessment of reality, and I'm saying it is not reality. And I want to have my reality shown, which everybody thinks is fantasy. So, really, all you people are living a complete, total fantasy. Because if you can't accept that, then I don't know what to say. If you can say, "Oh, that's not a dragon, that's not a fish, this is nothing, it didn't happen," well, then you really have no ability to be scientifically oriented anyway. So if that's the case, you're starting from a point of total impossible to get to the truth. So once you assess this and say, "Ooh, well, I guess the guy's right, there's a dragon. Ooh, it looks like there's a fish. Ooh, they wrote all this stuff. Ooh, there's Atlantis. Ooh, it drained down to the ocean." Once you start to investigate all this, I have videos on all this. I have documentation, backing support. I read literally everything that was ever written about this stuff. Hesiod and Plato and Herodotus and all of them, Homer and Iliad, and the whole 9 yards. And they all started back around 700 BC in that area. Hesiod wrote the 5 Ages of Man and a bunch of stuff. And they were all about the creation story and how literally there were gods on earth that, you have to read them. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And once I went back and started to verify the things he was saying, he was right. Herodotus has a map. It puts Atlantis right there in the Atlas Mountains. Atlantis in the Atlas Mountains. And Herodotus puts it right there. And even Plato said when this thing collapsed, they will never again speak of the amount of mud that flows from anything, because and even the scientists say they can't imagine how much mud could have flown out of this offshore collapse, when you can look at here and see it was not offshore, it flowed right out of here. So what I'm getting at is, don't listen to the things that are being told, because they're guessing at things, and they're guessing with the total misunderstanding of geology. It's nothing like they're thinking, and you will never ever get there from here. All right, right along I've been saying the Gulf of Mexico has nothing to do with an impact crater. It was a creature. And this is another display of truth. This hole is from Natron, and that Natron was from a dead creature. Now listen to what they have to say, and I'm going to just comment on it.
Contained in one area, you have this strange vertical container, this tub, sitting down there. And then inside the tub is a murky water, sort of a very dilute, milk-looking substance. It's a deadly lake, bizarrely deep beneath the sea. It sits on the seabed. It doesn't float up and kind of mix with the ocean above. It sits there like a lake on the ocean floor.
All of this is totally understandable. Salt water and fresh water have a separation layer.
You see this blue lake, and then you realize, wait a second, we're already underwater. How is there a lake underwater? Coming up.
All right, I explained about the natron, and the natron is extremely dense in salt. The pharaohs used it for embalming, and I think they still use it. Well, it's sodium, it's salt. It draws the moisture out of your kidneys, and that's how it works in your body. And it collects in these places where the kidneys were and the bile ducts were. And that is exactly what happened. And this is the reason, because extreme heavy salt water is, fresh water floats on it. Just like you float on top of salt water because you're literally full of fresh water.
Less dense water sitting on top, and you've got the denser salty water stuck to the bottom. Now,
that's Natron.
Very, very salty water is a lot denser. You've got these two separate bodies. They're not mixing.
Rebecca Bell develops a theory for how this sinister underwater lake could have formed.
In the Gulf of Mexico in the mid-Jurassic, that was 165 million years ago, where there were dinosaurs wandering around, this area of the world was a shallow basin. Every now and again it got filled with salty water. That water evaporated due to the heat of the sun, and we started to build up this layer of salt.
Why only that one little
spot?
spot?
The layer builds up to 5,000 feet thick. Over millions of years, sediment piles on top of the salt. Then the oceans reflood the area.
So deep, deep, deep beneath the seafloor, there's actually a layer of rock salt where we are here in the Gulf of Mexico. That rock salt is like...
All right, they're just going into trying to figure it out, and they have no way to figure it out because they don't understand that it's from life. So they're saying there's a layer of rock salt under there, which if there's salt under there, that's fine. But it came from natron. It didn't just grow there by itself. That's the problem. They don't understand the physiology and the biology of gigantic creatures is the same as regular creatures. So things concentrate in different areas, different chemistry. And I know the chemistry because I have examined literally thousands and thousands and thousands of rocks to understand this. I did so many rocks that I filled a 200-foot drainage ditch with the leftovers, and I have them still coming out of my ears. I have every specimen that you could want. I have literally every body part of everything. I mean, that I can think of, and they're all in different states of decay and decomposition. Let me put that way. These are mud fossils. These are wet fossilization, wet soft tissue that fossilized. And the reason it fossilized and didn't rot like, oh, it rotted, it would have, no, it doesn't. And the reason it didn't is because these are from a flood of salt water and fine wet mud. The process is that the creature is waterlogged in that salty water, which is virtually the same pH as the creature, so it expels the things that would normally explode it into the water because it goes into solution, and your body will leak the stuff out instead of blow up. It will not allow invasion by little microorganisms at this point. It's, you know, it's become waterlogged. It's becoming waterlogged for a very extended period of time. And then it gets encapsulated in mud. And then as the mud dries out, and as they may even land on top of the earth and not be in the mud, but sooner or later they will dry out, and the material that was left after all of the volatile stuff, which is just gases and things, it's hydrocarbons and nitrogen and oxygen and the things that are going to blow up and explode your body. That's why your body explodes, the gases. Well, they go into the water, and that leaves a waterlogged mass of minerals. You are nothing but minerals. You're minerals. And what happens when the minerals dry out? They become mineralized body parts and stone. And that's what I show, and that's what mud fossils are, and I have them in exactly exquisite conditions that are fully certified and DNA certified as well. So this is the process I'm talking about. This is a process of biology. Until they understand and deal with the processes of biology and the fact that the earth is literally constructed of creatures, geology will never be correct, ever. So until they confront this and say, I'm totally insane, my DNA tests are wrong, my anatomist who owns an autopsy school is wrong, my CAT scans that were done by Jesse Garant and Associates, who does industrial CAT scans of racing car engines and everything, must be wrong. The 2 labs that are certified to do this ancient protocol DNA that came back with 100% Homo sapien in 2 regions of the mitochondrial DNA, they must be wrong. 3 different tests. The chemistry that I did that turns chicken tissue into solidified pre-mud fossil, which means it becomes like a strong leathery texture, and that will dry out into stone. I have done this, and it creates feldspar in the correct conditions. That must be wrong. If all that is wrong, then go about your geology. But if some of that is right, or any of that is right, or all of that is right, you must confront that, or you are just walking around in the dark. And that is what you're doing, my friends. You are walking around in the dark looking for something that does not exist. Okay, my friends, we need to do a recruitment drive. We're just about at 28,000 and not growing that fast. Now, what you have just seen, unless you have been a frequent mud fossil visitor here, should have changed your life, unless you just didn't see anything. Now, if it did affect you, and it should affect you quite a bit, because not only is the things in geology and so forth not correct, and this is like a curiosity, it's spectacular, yes, but it has much more to do than that. And also we need to, like, things like this. This is literally hair. Now, they're claiming at University of Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, that this is something that just actually formed because of volcanic activity and so forth. Now, I tried to confront them, and they're not going to respond. Well, they haven't responded, let me put it that way. They might, but it's been a while. And these are the actual hairs that are from giant creatures. And I show all of this, and I show all the documentation, all the, you know, there's the red and the black from the blood, the vein and the artery blood, and there's the kaolin clays, there's a variegation of the shafts. And I had showed the giants again, and that's a mole. That's either a mole or a wart. That's hairs growing up into that cornified mole. And that's something. I mean, you got to come up to Mud Fossil University, but you got to get your friends. You got to stand up for yourself. Don't hide this. Don't hide out and say, oh, yeah, you guys are all right about all this other stuff. Well, they're not right. You just have to talk, and you have to say to your professors that you would like them to explain this to them, and they're not going to be able to explain this, and they will end up, you know, get something from them in writing, because they are the ones that are supposed to be teaching you for money. You're paying big money to be taught. You want to be taught the right things. I wouldn't accept it. You know, I'm out of that arena, and I have no dog in this race. So you're on your own. But if you don't start telling people to come up here and subscribe and to start learning this for the reality that it is, then you're going to be considered like an outcast, and you'll feel like you're in your own universe. And I'm telling you, that's a fact. So you're going to have to do it on your own, because I cannot help you past this point. They shut me out, and I'm just doing what I'm doing. So good luck, and this affects everything about you, your future, even your eternity. If there's giants and leviathans and dragons and serpents all over the earth, that's a whole new issue there for what was written. So take it with a grain of salt. And by the way, we talked about salt. I want to show you one last picture. Is underneath the Great Lakes. They talked about salt being underneath where the lake, I mean the Gulf of Mexico. Now let's look up salt, and I will show you something that'll blow your freaking mind if it hasn't been blown yet. So let's find salt. Here we go. Salt, salt, salt. Okay, salt production, bada bing. What do we see? What are we looking at? That is underneath the Great Lakes. Okay, they said in the Gulf of Mexico, which is nothing more than a big lake. They're under there. There's salt deposits, absolutely, no question whatsoever, and they were made from the natron leaking down and literally turning the flesh into salt. And now I say, whoa, this is just something from volcanoes. Absolutely not. And why can I say that? Because what is this guy doing? He's picking out the vein blood, which is the black FeO2 blood, because that stuff will break your teeth. The rest is salt. It's from flesh. It's flesh and connective tissue. What's this? You see those red spots? You see those? That's the arterial. Anybody that's into mud fossils knows that you have your black and you have your red. That is underneath the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are not carved from glaciers. And I've seen the draining of the Great Lakes, and that is tissue. It is not carved from any glaciers, so there's a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed. There might have been glaciers, but that didn't carve the Great Lakes. Okay, stay tuned, because this one just came up afterwards, and this, all of a sudden, they started seeing all these flashing, glowing, extremely brilliant lights. And the next thing, there was an enormous earthquake that happened within like a minute or so later, 30 seconds. See, I'll never forget it, she says. There were flashes in the sky. I didn't know what was happening. And then all of a sudden, there was an enormous earthquake, and the whole ground shook and everything. So I'm going to go through that, and I can explain that event too. So stay with Mud Fossil University.